Hey folks, welcome back to the Edupedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. And today again we will be continuing with the standards on auditing. And guess what? The standard under consideration for today's lecture would be SA 600, which is using the work of another auditor. And before we start with this lecture, let me remind you that this is not the first lecture for this standard. Right? We have already had a lecture on the standard. If any one of you have not referred to that lecture, please go back, refer to that lecture, understand it, and then come back to this, because this is a continuation of that lecture. Because if you don't go through that lecture, maybe there are some things that you may miss out, that you may miss to understand basically. Right? And for the rest who have already seen that video and are continuing with this standard, please stay tuned with me. We will be covering the standard further now. Right? So what have we seen basically in the previous lecture? I'll just show it to you. I won't give you any description on it. If you want a description, go back to the previous lecture. Right? So what we have done in the introduction part is reference to SA 200, right, about the responsibility of the auditor, another auditor of the component, non-applicability on the joint auditor and the predecessor auditor. If components FI is immaterial, the financial information is immaterial, then you may not apply the standard at that point of time. Why? Because you are not using his financial information, so you don't need any application of the standard for using his financial information, because anyways you're not using it, right? And last is you have to determine the effect on your nature, time and extent and on your risk assessment procedures. Okay with that? And moving ahead, we had also discussed three definitions, right? One was the principal auditor, the auditor of the entity, the prime entity which is under consideration, for which the essay has been drafted. Then is the other auditor, auditor of any of the components, right, whose work will be used by the principal auditor into his financial information when it will be incorporated, right? So those are the other auditors. And remember, there is an existence of other auditor only when there is a principal auditor, and there will be an existence of principal auditor only when there is an other auditor. Otherwise, both these terminologies will not exist. It will just be the auditor, the statutory auditor of the company, right? And now when we talk about the components, what are the components? The division, branch, subsidiary, joint venture and associates, but only those whose financial information are being considered by the principal auditor, right? Rest, the immaterial components are not considered as component actually, right? Because their financial information will not be collaborated while preparing the financial statements for the prime entity. Clear with that? So that is what we had covered in the previous lecture. Now today we move ahead to understand the procedures that the principal auditor would follow. Would follow for what? Would follow to understand whether or not the work has to be used, would be followed to determine the reliability on the work, to what extent will the work be used, what is the disclosures he has to make, what are the things he has to do, how does he determine the work of the other auditor, and all such stuff, right? All your questions regarding the procedure will be answered in this particular slide. Okay, so we start with the procedures of the principal auditor. The first thing we understand is that he can also visit the component. Now the right to visit the component, when I talk about component, we are talking about only those divisions, subsidiaries, branches, joint ventures and the associate companies whose financial information is relevant for the principal auditor, right? And at any point of time, if the principal auditor considers it necessary, he thinks that yes, he should be visiting the branch because there are certain things, it's not specifically the branch, it is all the components, where there are certain things that he needs to evaluate, right? If he wants to, then there are statutes that also allow him. They actually confer the right on the principal auditor to visit the component, right? And what does he do when he visits the component? He can examine the books of accounts, he can examine the other records of the component, and whatever he wants, whatever he thinks is necessary, he can do when he visits the component, right? But when we talk about visiting the component, right, just always don't consider that yes, there is another auditor over there. There may be a situation there is no another auditor for the component, then he has to go there, right? He has to go there, he has to get the financial information, he has to walk through it, to understand the procedures. He has to do his audit procedures to understand, to get the evidences, to draw a conclusion, right? That is when he wants to involve the information of that component in his financial information of the main entity, right? So when there is no another auditor, then he has to go there and he has to apply his knowledge, apply his procedures and do it, right? But if there is another auditor at that component, then he may not be required to go and visit the component. In that case, he may include a statement that yes, I rely upon the document, I rely upon the report that is issued by the component auditor, which is the other auditor, right? Unless and until it is very necessary for him to visit the branch or visit the subsidiary joint venture, I mean the component, right? He will not visit. But if it is actually necessary, even again, then the statute has inferred the right upon him that yes, even then if he wants, he can go and visit the branch or any other component. There is no restriction. But generally the principal auditors, they do not do this if there is another auditor over there. Otherwise, yeah, you always have to go there, right? Like for example, when I was under the audit of in the Big Fours, right? Our clients, when they are listed clients, they have their offices, branches at different location in the country, right? There are certain companies that had 14 to 15 branches, 15 different locations in the company from where they're operating. So we used to have a big team over there, and every one individual, one senior, one AM, or one somebody, they used to go to different locations. They used to audit the location, and then all of them, they used to come back, sit at the head office together, and then consolidate the entire financial statement. It is not that one auditor who goes to one branch, then to other, then to other. He doesn't have that much time. He has to conclude the audit within time, right? He cannot just go on traveling and one day nothing is solved. You need at least a week on a component, on a branch, right? So what do you do over there? Basically, in practical scenario, you have a huge team and you segregate the team, you segregate the responsibilities. So, okay, you go here, you go there, you go there. And when they come back, you review them. When I say you, it's actually the principal or the partner who has the responsibility of issuing that report on the financial statement of that entity. He will review and see whether all the works have been performed. And even when they come back, if they want, they can call for some documents from the branch later also. Head office, there are people over there, they have authority, they'll ask for the documents and that will be done. So even the reviews, they take place in the office, in the head office basically, when all of them are sitting together with all the details and data of the component. That is what generally happens, right? But if at any component we know that the component has involved another auditor, we would avoid it. Okay, nobody has to go there. We'll just take the report from that auditor. We'll judge him whether the auditor is correct or not, and then we will rely upon that work. Now, we advance with these procedures considering the fact that yes, there is another auditor, because this standard actually deals with the situation when there is an existence of the other auditor, right? So assume that yes, there is another auditor, and now how do we use his work? So the next point of consideration would be to consider the professional competence. Yes, listen, you are a chartered accountant, right? You have been appointed as the auditor, statutory auditor of a company, of an entity, right? Now there is a branch of that company and you want the data, the financial information of that branch to be included in the financial information of your entity, right? The principal entity for which you are auditing as a statutory auditor, right? So if there is no auditor at the branch, you go there or you send a personnel over there. They do the audit, they perform the task as directed, and they come back with the details and the data. But if there is another auditor, what you do is you ask for his documents, his work. Please give us a report. Please give us some light, throw some light upon these topics, right? But the point is, how do you rely upon that other auditor? If the other auditor is a member of the institute, well and good, you can rely upon him because you know he is also following the same standards, right? So you will just judge a little bit of his competence, capabilities and objectivity, and you say, okay, he's good to go. He's a qualified chartered accountant, he knows how to audit, get me his work. By looking at the work papers itself, you will understand that yes, he has performed his task. But if that other auditor is not a chartered accountant, he is not a member of the institute, right? He has been appointed as an auditor under some other statute, then what do? Then in that situation, you will call for the data, and before that you will judge the professional competence. What is his qualification? Right? Is he eligible to do it? Do you think yes, he is professionally so qualified that he will discharge his duties very well? If you think yes, judge his capabilities as well, whether he is able to use that competence and his objectivity. And once you are done with that, you can use the work. If you consider with your searchings and investigations that you have done that yes, that is appropriate. But if you do not consider it to be appropriate, then you will have to go ahead with some other procedures. Right? So you will have to also consider the professional competence of the other auditor whose work you are going to use, because that will let you know what would be the nature, time and extent of your audit procedures. When you want actually to get the details of that branch, of that component, do you think you need to go ahead with some additional procedures for that, or is it sufficient if you get the details from the other auditor? Clear with it? And that will be based on the analysis of the competence of that other auditor. The next point of consideration for us would be obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. Now this is one topic where you have to pay attention to, right? Because this is not the general idea behind, this is not the general understanding that you require over here. You need some specific knowledge over here, right? So when we're talking about obtaining the sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, then first of all we need to know that for what are you obtaining the evidence. Are you obtaining the evidences for the transactions and the facts and the events at the branch or the component? No. You are obtaining sufficient and appropriate audit evidence to prove or to analyze whether the work of the another auditor is adequate for your purposes. For that you need some sufficient and appropriate audit evidence to prove, to support that yes, his work is efficient, his work is relevant for you, his work is useful for you, right? That is after you have judged his competence, right? So what do you do for that? There is a certain procedure. So when you know that yeah, this is the branch which is relevant and whose information need to be incorporated in your financial information for the principal entity, right? So what you do is, before you start or before the auditor starts his work, right, you try a coordination with him, either over a call, video conferencing, meeting him in person, whatever you want to do. Basically you do it over a call, right? You drop some mails, you drop some data in the mail, some documents in the mail, and then you decide that yes, boss, these are the specific considerations that I would be needing from you. Right? When we are auditing the principal component over here, the principal entity over here, you being a component, there are certain data that we need from you, right? So please follow these certain procedures and try to analyze this aspect of this transaction or of this event and let us know about their genuinity, about their validity, about their existence, valuation, whatever is the assertion. That you will ask him. You will let him be informed about what is your requirement. You will tell him where are you going to actually use his work, right? Because he should know what are the key areas where he should be focusing. What are the key areas for which he needs some detailed analysis. He needs some supportings to give it to you, right? So what is the purpose for which his work is to be used and what is the specific work that is to be used? He should be aware in the planning stage so that he can plan his work, his task accordingly. So you will also let him know about the matters or about the areas that would require some special consideration, right? And if there is any intercomponent transaction, that means the transaction that is affecting the financial information of your entity as well as the component. That means on the same transaction, even you are working over here and he will be working over there. So you will tell him that, okay, these things are under my reach. These things I can check, but there are certain things from your end, from the component's end, that I cannot access to. I do not have the access to. So please get me the information related to those specific aspects so that we can correlate and complete the entire flow, the entire walkthrough of these transactions that are being conducted intercomponent. And you'll also tell him that, listen, this is my deadline. I want to close my audit by this time. So I would require your details latest by this time. So please prioritize the work accordingly. And if you think that there are some other guidance that you need to provide, like what are the accounting, auditing and reporting requirements that has to be followed, that has to be abided by the other auditor, you will let him know, again over the mail or anything, right? And then you will also take a representation from him that yes, he has applied those, he has complied with those requirements that you had requested him to do. What happens with that is that your reliability on the work that he has performed increases, right? And you do not have to go ahead with certain other audit procedures. You're getting what I mean to say? It may be a little burdensome. It's a lot of things that we are discussing right now, but try to just grab it, right? Try to just imagine that yes, this is the principal auditor, this is the component auditor, and you want to use his work. You let him know, yeah, I want this ABCD, right? And for ABC, I want this 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 assertions that has to be checked. Please check it, and before this day, please give it to me. I want to use it. Right? It's clear with you. And please follow these standards that will be applicable over there. And also give me a revert that you know and you have followed it while you are preparing it. And at the end, yeah, please do it on time. I want it. I want to incorporate it into my office, into my audit. Right? You just make the communication and everything is sorted. Right? Because he's an auditor. He's not the client who is not giving you the data and you just want to say, no, please give me the data, otherwise I'll be qualifying it. I'll be putting it in the emphasis of matter paragraph. If you don't give it to me, I won't take it later. It will be a disclaimer that no, I could not judge it. You can threaten your client like that, but you cannot threaten the other auditor like that. He'll say, don't. Why do I care? Right? Those are separate things. The thing is, all you want is this. This is the communication you will have with the other auditor in order to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence whether his work is relevant for your audit purpose or not. Clear with that? I guess you are. Now moving on next with it, right? You will also need to discuss the audit procedures. How do you discuss the audit procedures? What are the audit procedures? Audit procedures over here are the procedures that are being followed by the another auditor. Remember in the previous part where you had to obtain the sufficient appropriate audit evidence, what you do is you communicate with them. Yeah, these are the areas, this is what I want, this is how you do it, these are the requirements that you need to follow, these are the statutory requirements, the auditing, accounting requirements, please give me a revert that yes, you know it, you have complied with it, all those things are done, right? But now what are the procedures that he has followed? You need to check that, right? You need to review the procedures adapted, the procedures applied by the another auditor. How do you do that? You might sit down for a discussion with him. Maybe over the call, please let me know what areas have you checked. It is similar to the review that you do for your subordinate. Right? If I'm a senior and my manager is reviewing me, then all those things that he will ask, hey, did you check this? Did you check this? What was the percentage over here? How much is the change from the last year? Okay, this much. Is it reasonable? What happened? Okay, this is the case. Okay, this has happened. Now, where are these documents? Have you checked these assertions? Did you get out samples for this? Was this done? Was that done? All these things that normally a person does to review the subordinate, the same thing the principal auditor will do to review the work of the other auditor. Right? Or otherwise, the other auditor, what he does is he gives you a written summary about all the procedures and all the findings that he has performed and he has obtained. And how does he give it? He either gives it entire written document, or you have given him a questionnaire and on which he reverts back. You give him a questionnaire. Did you perform TOD, TOC, analytical review procedures? Did you check this? Did you check that? And he said, yeah, tick, 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 tick. Oh no, this is this. This is an exception because of this. So that is the kind of response that he will be giving to you, right? And you can refer to that as well. That is how you understand the audit procedures that the another auditor must have followed. And if it is a very critical situation, you may also decide to visit and meet him. Okay, is there a problem? Let us resolve it together. What is it? Bring it on to me. I will check it. Right? And then the nature, time and extent of the procedures that you are following as a principal auditor will always depend upon what analysis have you made about the another auditor, about his competence, about his professional competence and capabilities, about the procedures that he has followed, about the compliance that he has done to the regulatory and the accounting and auditing requirements, right? Based on that, you will decide what will be the nature, time and extent of the procedures that you follow. And this knowledge can also be gained from the previous work of the other auditor. If in the previous year the same another auditor performed the task, you know, yeah, whatever he has done, you know all these things. You don't need to rejudge every time. It is just a cumbersome task, right? And it is not even a formality that you are doing just for your satisfaction that yes, his work is correct. That is not a statutory requirement that every year you have to do it. Right? Understand that. That is your thing. You're doing it for your sake, to be secure, not to form a wrong opinion. But if you are already secure, if you have already analyzed these things in the previous year, then it's good to go. Yeah, this year you can go very peacefully with them, no problem. But if there was any problem analyzed in the previous audit, then you will be very careful with those things again, and you will communicate him in the beginning. Listen, dude, last time this was messed up. Please take special care of that. Please include it in your checklist. I will check that specifically. Please give me the documents required. At the end, I added some additional requirements. You provided to me. I'm reverting back to the mail. Please send it to me. That is how you go ahead with it. Right? So I hope till here you are clear with it. Right? On the screen you again have the review of the return statement. We have discussed about it. Now there's one topic that we discussed in the very beginning, that yes, you may also have to visit the branch and everything. Understand, when you are using his work, right, at some point of time you may also want to discuss with the management and the principal auditor, okay, these are the things, right? You will also confirm with the management of the component, will you or won't you? You will, right? You will not blindly depend upon the work. Maybe the management says, no, I did not give him the data complete so far. How can he give you an assessment on that? And the auditor was not aware. Oh, the data was incomplete. Shit, I was not aware of it. Right? So you will have to reconfirm with the management whether everything is going well, and you will obviously discuss with the management, right, before issuing a report that would include the component, right? And now we have also discussed that yes, you will go ahead with some special procedures to judge the competence of the person if he is not a member of the institute. Now there should be a question in your mind: is it possible for someone else to be an auditor? Why are we doing CA then? Why are we struggling so hard to qualify our CA final examinations and get the degree if we can be auditors otherwise as well? Please let us know the source. How can we be the auditor? I'll let you know the source. If you don't want to do your chartered accountancy and still want to be an auditor, please leave India. Yes, that is the only situation. Because if your component is situated in a different country, in a foreign country, we don't have the requirement of a chartered accountant being the auditor. Right? Their statute, they say, okay, this person is qualified to be the auditor. Then go and take that qualification. You can be the auditor of that component, but you cannot be an auditor in India. In India, if you want to be an auditor of a company, you have to be a chartered accountant for that. I'm talking about auditor of the company. There are some specific, again, detailed cases about the CAG and other stuff. Let us not get into that. Right? You are not CAG. Right? So when we are talking about that, so in that situation, when you know he is not a member of the institute, he is not abiding by the standards given by the institute, then what is he doing? You will have to judge. Right? You'll call for, okay, what qualification does he have? XYZ. What is that qualification? You'll again Google it and you'll take evidences, oh, that qualification means this. What are the standards they follow? To what extent is their work acceptable internationally? Okay, these are the things. And then you decide how much reliance to be placed on the work of that auditor, right? And finally, you will consider the findings of the other auditor. Clear with that? Those are the basic procedures that need to be followed by. Now, apart from this, there are some other residuary topics remaining in this standard, 2-3 small topics, right? But we don't have a lot of time to take it up in this lecture. So those small topics will be taken up again in the next lecture. So until then, please stay tuned. This lecture, this standard is not yet over. But otherwise, your basic part, the major part that you would be requiring to refer when you are going for your internship, or you will be required to refer for your examination purpose, is already completed. Right? There are one or two minute small parts that we'll be discussing, and we will be taking it up in the next lecture, and we will start with the next standard as well, which is SA 610 and then 620, and then we will also have a consolidated discussion on all the three, the differences and the comparison and everything, right? So that it is well and clear with you as to the distinction between the three, and you know when do you refer to any one of these in your examination and when you don't. right? Not every time when you see the word another auditor or internal auditor, you just refer to the standard. No, not every time. When the requirement of that standard is required in that question, you would refer to the standard. Otherwise, you won't. Just don't go on writing. Otherwise, anywhere you find the word documentation, you refer to the standard. Audit evidence, okay, refer to the standard. No, that is not how you refer it into your examination. So I will teach you again how to refer to the standards in your examinations as well. Right? So with that statement, we would conclude the class today and take up the rest in the next lecture. So until then, this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you.